The sun had barely begun to set over the rolling hills surrounding Stanford University when a group of young men from one of America's most prestigious institutions gathered under the cover of darkness. Their faces were obscured by hoods, their voices muffled as they whispered secrets that would change the course of history. It was 1938, and these students were not just any ordinary graduates preparing to enter the workforce. They were part of an exclusive club known only to a few, a secret society with roots deep in America's academic elite. The group, called the Black Sheep, had their own initiation rites and codes, symbols that would become synonymous with wealth, power, and influence. But little did anyone know at the time, these young men were plotting something far more sinister than the usual college pranks or social exclusivity. As they sat huddled together in a secluded corner of Stanford's campus, their plans began to take shape, a plan that would lay the foundation for what is now known as Silicon Valley. One by one, each member contributed his vision and ambition. They talked of innovation without boundaries, but whispered about a darker goal: to create technology so advanced it could outstrip any government regulations or ethical considerations. Their shared belief was that with great power came great responsibility, yet they were willing to overlook this principle in pursuit of their goals. The group's leader, an ambitious student named William H., had grand visions for the future. He dreamed of a world where technology would dominate and human limitations could be surpassed through artificial intelligence and automation. His colleagues nodded along, drawn by his charisma and vision, unaware that they were walking into a storm they couldn't control. As the night wore on, their plans began to take shape in the form of an elaborate map, the blueprint for a tech empire that would stretch from Silicon Valley all across America. They named it Project Phoenix, after the mythical bird that rises from its own ashes. It was a symbol of rebirth and renewal, but also in the heart of California, nestled between rolling hills and endless skies, lies a tale that whispers through the valleys like an unspoken secret. Silicon Valley, once hailed as a beacon of innovation and progress, has slowly revealed its darker underbelly, a shadowy past shrouded in mystery. Imagine stepping back to 1950s Palo Alto, where scientists and engineers from around the world gathered with a shared dream to shape the future through technology. The atmosphere was electric. It felt like anything could be achieved if you just had an idea and some determination. But beneath this utopian veneer lay hidden layers of corporate espionage, political intrigue, and ethical breaches that would come to define the region's character. One person who knew all too well how these dark forces intertwined was a young physicist named William Frenkel. Born in Russia during the height of Stalin's purges, he escaped to America with nothing but his intellect and determination. He arrived at Stanford University in 1950, where he quickly rose through the ranks thanks to his brilliance. Frenkel worked on some of the most cutting-edge projects of the era, projects that would later shape not only technology but also politics. His research involved radar systems for both military defense and civilian applications. It was a time when the Cold War was raging fiercely, and every technological advancement could potentially mean victory or defeat in this global conflict. But Frenkel's contributions extended beyond just his work at Stanford. He became entangled in an intricate web of government contracts, military projects, and corporate interests. His knowledge of radar technology wasn't just valuable, it was invaluable. As he delved deeper into these murky waters, he found himself at the center of a conspiracy that would test not only his loyalty but also his very soul. One night, as Frenkel sat in his modest apartment poring over classified documents, he stumbled upon something alarming, a series of memos detailing plans to sabotage foreign radar systems. The handwriting: the sun sets over the rolling hills surrounding Silicon Valley, casting long shadows that stretch across its sprawling landscape. In these quiet moments before nightfall, it's easy to see why so many people are drawn here. Silicon Valley is a place of endless possibilities and boundless innovation. But beneath this veneer lies a darker past, one shrouded in mystery and secrecy. The story begins in the 1940s when the United States was at war with Japan. In a small military base near Los Alamos, New Mexico, scientists were working furiously to develop an atomic bomb that would change history forever. Among them was a brilliant physicist named Edward Teller who had grand visions of a future where science and technology could solve all human problems. As the war ended, many of these scientists found their way westward, drawn by the promise of new beginnings in sunny California. They were joined by other luminaries like William Shockley, known for his groundbreaking work on semiconductors. These men had been part of a team that was not just changing the world but also shaping its future. However, what few knew at the time, or chose to admit later, was that their pasts held secrets they couldn't escape. Edward Teller, despite being hailed as a hero for his work on the hydrogen bomb, had a darker side. He had been part of an intelligence operation that secretly recruited Nazi scientists after World War II. This operation was codenamed Project Paperclip, and it brought to America men with questionable moral backgrounds. William Shockley's connection to this past began when he befriended Robert Oppenheimer, the director of Los Alamos during the Manhattan Project. However, their friendship was complicated by a shared history. They had both worked under J. Edgar Hoover's FBI at some point. This brought them into contact with an organization that would later play a significant role in shaping Silicon Valley's culture. As these scientists and engineers settled into their new lives in California, the sun dips low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the rolling hills of Silicon Valley. The area is now a bustling center of technology and innovation, but its origins hold secrets that are rarely spoken about. Hidden beneath the glossy facades of modern tech giants lies a darker past, a history shrouded in controversy. In 1950s California, a small group of scientists and engineers were drawn to the fertile ground between Stanford University and San Francisco Bay. They saw potential for groundbreaking technology, but little did they know that their work would soon be entangled with dark forces and ethical dilemmas. One day, as we travel back in time, we find ourselves on the streets of Palo Alto in 1953. The air is thick with anticipation. A new company called Fairchild Semiconductor has just been founded by 8 brilliant minds. Among them were William Shockley, who had recently won the Nobel Prize for his work at Bell Labs, and Robert Noyce, who would later co-found Intel. These men were driven by ambition and innovation but also harbored some dark beliefs. Shockley in particular was a fierce proponent of eugenics, a pseudoscientific belief that certain human beings are genetically superior to others. His influence extended far beyond the walls of Fairchild Semiconductor. It touched the very fabric of Silicon Valley's development. As we delve deeper, we uncover that Shockley's ideas were not just personal musings but part of a broader network of scientists and technologists who shared his views. This group included figures like Herman Studebaker California, HSC, a company founded by Shockley in 1956 with the explicit goal of racial segregation. The story unfolds as we visit the former HSC site, now overgrown and abandoned. Here, workers were required to sign loyalty oaths stating their race and religious beliefs. The facility was a stark reminder of how technology could be used not just for progress but also for oppression. Shockley, in the heart of California's sunny climes, lies a place that has become synonymous with innovation and technological marvels. Silicon Valley is where dreams are built on circuits and servers. Yet, beneath its gleaming facades lie shadows cast by a dark past. The origins of this tech mecca were not just about brilliant minds and groundbreaking ideas. They also involved questionable practices, corporate greed, and the exploitation of workers. One of the earliest chapters in Silicon Valley's history that paints it as more than just a place for innovation is the tale of Stanford University. In 1892, Stanford University was founded with a donation from Leland Stanford, former governor of California, and his wife Jane. Initially, the university did not have much to offer beyond what its land promised. However, over time it became an epicenter of research and innovation. By the mid-20th century, Stanford had developed into one of America's premier educational institutions. But it was during this period that a series of events began to unfold which would shape the future landscape of Silicon Valley. In 1957, 2 Stanford alumni, William Shockley and Gordon Moore, later founder of Intel, founded companies that laid down roots for what we now recognize as Silicon Valley. Shockley, an early pioneer in semiconductor technology, was known for his brilliance but also for his controversial views on race. His beliefs were not just personal, they significantly influenced the development of a company culture where discrimination ran rampant. Shockley's hiring practices and management style created an environment that excluded many talented individuals based solely on their racial backgrounds. Meanwhile, Gordon Moore's Intel Corporation began to grow rapidly in the 1960s, with its roots firmly planted in Stanford University's tech ecosystem. While Moore is often celebrated for his predictions about computing power growth, Moore's Law, it was also during this period that Intel faced allegations of exploiting workers and creating a toxic work environment. In the early days, Silicon Valley was not as the sun sets over the rolling hills that once were fields of golden wheat. Now bathed in a warm, orange glow, we find ourselves standing on the edge of an era that shaped not just Silicon Valley but much of our modern world. The echoes of a dark past still reverberate through the sleek glass towers and bustling streets, reminding us that progress often comes at a cost. Imagine a time when dreams of technological utopia intertwined with visions of unchecked ambition. This was the birthplace where ideas were more than just concepts, they were power. And in this crucible, the foundations of Silicon Valley's golden age began to take shape. But beneath its polished surface lay secrets that have been buried for decades. The early years were filled with a sense of limitless possibility, startups and dreams that seemed almost too good to be true. Yet behind those closed doors, a darker reality was unfolding. Corporate espionage, industrial sabotage, and ruthless competition defined the landscape as much as innovation did. Companies like Fairchild Semiconductor became battlegrounds where cutting-edge technology met cutthroat business practices. At the heart of this story is a man named Gordon Moore. His vision for integrated circuits and silicon chips would go on to transform the world, but his legacy was built upon foundations that were far from solid. The culture he helped create, competitive, secretive, driven by an almost manic desire for success at any cost, would prove both revolutionary and destructive. As we delve deeper into this tale of ambition and greed, a picture begins to emerge, one where the line between innovation and exploitation is often blurred. Corporate espionage became rampant as companies like Intel and AMD fought tooth and nail over market share. The methods used were not just unethical, they bordered on illegal. From stolen blueprints to industrial spies lurking in hallways, every tactic was fair game. But perhaps even more troubling are the stories of those who stood up against these practices only to be silenced or worse. Whistleblowers spoke out about misconduct and corruption, but some truths hide in shadows. Subscribe to uncover them.